They died in such strange ways, it's unbelievable. Ryan Kelly, 31 years old. Ryan had climbed to the top of a water slide after the water park was already closed. As he slid down the inside of a support tube, he became completely trapped because the space was too narrow to move. Rescuers spent hours dismantling the slide, but by the time they finished, Ryan was already dead. Carol Wright, 39 years old. Carol was walking her bicycle over the Royal Park Bridge when it suddenly started to rise. As the gap between the sections widened, Carol became trapped between them. She held onto the edge, but the bridge kept moving. Even though someone tried to help her, Carol fell into the ocean, losing her life from the impact. Stefan Andersson was in his apartment with Anna Trill. An argument escalated during the early morning hours. Anna, remembering how she had been taught to defend herself, grabbed one of her heels and stabbed Stefan with it. Animals that asked humans for help. A man was tending to some plants in his garden when suddenly a doe started bothering him. The man didn't understand what was happening, so at first he ignored her. But because of the animal's persistence, he decided to pay attention to her. And it's a good thing he did, because the doe led the man to where her baby was, who had fallen into a hole and couldn't get out. With a little help, the man managed to rescue it, but that's not where the story ends. The next day, the mother returned to where the man was, and the little one thanked him for saving him. A man on his way to work started hearing animals crying, and it turned out to be 3 very small kittens who, because of the intense cold, had their tails stuck to the snow and none of them could move. The only thing the man had on hand was a hot coffee, which he used to melt the ice and free the 3 kittens. Videos with unexpected endings. At first, this video scared me because it looked like a dog without a head, but no, it turned out to be a normal dog, thank goodness. Here we see 2 soldiers who seem a little scared, looking at something inside a door. As they approach for a closer look, they see something that sends them fleeing in terror. Whatever it is must be truly dangerous to frighten soldiers, right? Well, no, it was just a little squirrel. This person was going crazy. They didn't know how to turn on the bathroom faucet. They checked the sensors above, below, and on the sides, even clapped for a sound sensor, but it turned on unexpectedly by moving the plant. This video blew my mind. At first it looked like a man with his eagle, but then everything started to get weirder until up close we see that it's a Star Wars sculpture, but if you look at it from a certain angle, it looks like a realistic eagle. The dumbest ways people have lost their lives. Joseph Burris, 32 years old. He decided to perform his most ambitious trick. It was to escape from a transparent coffin while he was handcuffed and chained under 7 tons of dirt and cement. The man was placed in the coffin, sealed, and lowered into a pit over 2 meters deep. But the material was heavier than he had expected, and the coffin started to groan until it completely collapsed. Rescuers dug quickly, but Joseph had already died. Casey Adams, age 29, lost her husband tragically and kept his ashes in an urn. One day by chance, she tasted the ashes and she liked it and believed it wouldn't harm her. She saw it as a way to feel closer to her late husband. But it gradually became an addiction and she ate more and more each day. What she didn't realize was that bodies are treated with chemicals before cremation. Because of this, one night while consuming the last of the ashes, she collapsed in her living room and died. The parents of these kids don't know whether to laugh or cry. This boy said in front of everyone that he had something inside his swimsuit and that he was going to take it out. Everyone got a little scared, but it's not what you think. The boy puts his hand in and what he pulls out of his swimsuit is a frog. A father was explaining to his son that to hit the ball well, he had to keep his eyes on the ball, and the boy followed his father's advice literally. It was Father's Day and a mother told her daughter to go wake up her dad, and the little girl did it like this. What would you do if your son did this after losing a game? At first, I felt sorry watching this video because I thought the boy was stuck on the door, but when I saw the end, I was left looking like a fool. The father frees the little one, but that's not what he wanted, so he puts the door back the same way and goes back in to keep getting attention. Insurance scammers caught on camera. While crossing the street, these 2 saw it as the perfect opportunity to try to scam the insurance and faked being hit by a car, but they didn't know 2 things. The car had a camera and was recording, and the other, even more important, was that the car belonged to the undercover police and they quickly got out to arrest him. This one seems incredible to me. There's a couple in the middle of the road and the car brakes to avoid running them over. And then the man sees the opportunity of his life and gives an Oscar-worthy performance as if he had been run over. Obviously, no one is going to believe him. This worker didn't feel like working anymore, but he wanted to make a lot of money, so he came up with a plan to scam the work insurance. He convincingly positioned himself on the ground as if he had fallen, and even an ambulance came to assist him. And when it seemed like his plan had worked, he didn't know there was a security camera that had recorded everything. The dumbest ways people have lost their lives. Ramesh Patel, 45 years old. Ramesh's cat jumped into a well full of animal waste. The man climbed into the well to rescue his cat, but didn't realize he couldn't get out by himself. His screams prompted his son to also jump into the well and become trapped like him. Then the whole family got trapped. Finally, a sixth family member went down tied with a rope. He rescued some, but Ramesh died after prolonged exposure to toxic gases. Yuri Leyukov, 33 years old. During a military instruction class, the police officer was teaching how grenades were used. He took out a hand grenade to demonstrate the mechanism. While speaking to the students, he became so engrossed in his speech that he unknowingly pulled the safety pin. When he released the lever, the grenade exploded, killing him instantly and injuring several students present. You can't imagine how these videos end. Some hospital workers started screaming because there was a mouse in the office. One of them covered it with a trash can and waited for a co-worker to come. The man, seeing that his co-workers had panicked, decided to help. He grabbed a piece of cardboard to cover the trash can, picked it up, and left the hospital to a safe place where he could release the mouse. And when he saw what was really inside, he was left speechless. It was indeed a mouse, but not the one he expected. A person on the subway recorded a backwards world. All the elderly ladies were looking at their phones, and the only young man in the whole subway car was crocheting. This is the most secure password in the world to unlock your laptop. If you know a better one, leave it in the comments. He plugs a barcode reader into his computer, and when he scans the one from a Coca-Cola bottle, it unlocks. Photos captured just before the tragedy. The Filipino politician Reynaldo Dagsa wanted a family photo to celebrate the new year, smiles, lights, happiness, and in the background, without anyone noticing, a man aiming a gun. A second after the flash, the shot rang out. The photo showed his own murder and also his killer. In Indiana, two teens were enjoying a hike. Liberty German raised her phone and took a picture of her friend crossing an old bridge. Minutes later, both disappeared. On the phone, a voice was found saying, "Down the hill." It was the killer guiding them to their deaths. Samantha Josephson, a college student, ordered an Uber after leaving a bar but got into the wrong car. The driver locked the car, trapping her inside. She was never seen alive again. People who survived the impossible. Julia Hill, 23 years old, climbed a giant sequoia to stop it from being cut down. Initially, everyone expected her to come down in a few days, but Julia remained there living on two makeshift platforms. After 2 years, they chose not to cut down the tree, and Julia was finally able to come down. Mark Stevens, 28 years old. Mark, caught in a sudden flood, was sucked into a drainage pipe. A police officer saw what was happening and ran to help him, but he was also swept away by the current. Both were violently pushed through a pipe over 30 meters long. They finally shot out the other end, gasping and covered in mud. No one knew how, but they were still alive. Keisha Watson, 26 years old, was waiting for the train when someone accidentally pushed her onto the tracks. At that moment, the train approached at full speed. Fortunately, the conductor saw her and hit the brakes, stopping the train just inches from Keisha. The parents of these children don't know whether to laugh or cry. A mother saw her little daughter putting something in her pocket, and you won't believe what it was. The little girl had put a live snake in her pocket and said it was going to be her pet. They tried to play a prank on this girl with a Christmas present, but it went pretty badly. They wrapped a stone to see her reaction, but she didn't get angry like everyone expected. She was very happy because they had given her a rock and said it was the best gift of all. A mother had to record her son using the ruler because she found it really funny. I don't see the problem. If he wants to use the ruler that way, let him. The little boy was getting ready to take a penalty kick, but unfortunately for him, he missed it. But that wasn't going to ruin his day, so he decided to celebrate as if he had scored a goal. No one understands how these two people are still alive. Christine Spain, 54 years old, was walking next to the train tracks when she fainted and fell right onto the rails. The train was already coming and there was no time for anything except for Lily, her 8-year-old dog. Lily didn't run away. She bit her jacket and pulled her hard. As the train passed, Christine was safe, but Lily wasn't. The train hit her, but she miraculously survived, though they had to amputate her paw. I'm sure that God created dogs to protect humans. Kendall Fleming, 28 years old, was sleeping inside a dumpster when it tilted and threw him straight into the garbage truck. Within seconds, the compactor began closing. He screamed as loudly as possible. When he could no longer breathe, a woman at home heard something odd. She called emergency services and police notified the driver. The compactor halted just inches away. The parents of these children don't know whether to laugh or cry. The mother wanted to play the classic fake tongue prank on her daughter to see how she would react. And when the girl pulled on the tongue and ripped it off instead of getting scared or grossed out, which would be normal, she tried to eat it. This baby has a curious habit, and his father doesn't understand why. The little one grabs him by the armpit hair and pulls hard, and he does it for several minutes without letting go at any point. The reaction of this little one when he sees a girl dressed as a ghost is incredible. If I don't see her, she's not there. The clerk at the toy store was surprised to see a boy come in alone. The little one grabbed his favorite toy and went to the register to pay, but he tried to pay with this. He had made a photocopy of a bill. A boy had gotten a small cut and wanted to put the band-aid on by himself, but he put it on his reflection. I don't think that's going to work. People who survive situations that seemed impossible. John O'Neill, 33 years old, was working with a wood chipper when a hook-shaped branch caught his ankle bracelet and dragged him inside. His screams weren't heard. All his co-workers were wearing hearing protection. John tried to escape, but the machine kept pulling in his legs. By the time someone saw him, it was too late. He'd lost his legs but was still alive. Co-workers made improvised tourniquets and his heart stopped in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. He needed more than 15 bags of blood and the incredible thing is that he survived. Jodie Foster, when she was 9 years old, was filming a movie with Zamba, a famous lion known for being calm until that day. Suddenly he lunged, bit her side and shook her violently. The crew ran out, leaving the girl alone. The trainer shouted until the lion let her go. Jodie only had a few scratches. Videos with unexpected endings. When I first watched this video, I felt really sorry, but after seeing the ending, I felt foolish. A dog that seems to have both of its back legs broken approaches a food stand. We see how the animal can't walk properly and basically has to drag itself. After a while, seeing the stand owner won't feed him, he quickly recovers and walks away normally. A woman went to put on one of her boots and saw that there was something strange inside, so she decided to record it to see what would come out of there. And I'm telling you, you won't see this coming. After hitting it for a while, it seemed like there was nothing there and I thought I was wasting my time watching the video. But there actually was something, a giant toad. A guy went to the store to see if they could fix his new iPhone 17 Pro. But when the worker saw a certain detail on the phone, he quickly kicked him out. Did you notice the reason why? Animals reunited with their owners after years. This is the reaction of a 15-year-old dog, deaf and blind, when he was reunited with his owner Rachel, who had been away from home for 2 months. Because he was deaf and blind, he didn't recognize her right away. But as soon as he smelled her, he knew his owner was back and his reaction is incredible. A 14-year-old boy received a dog for his birthday, but the animal disappeared and the boy was completely devastated. But 2 weeks later, his mother found the dog and brought him to the school gate. The moment the boy sees the dog through the window is incredible, and then I don't know which of the two is more excited. This little chimpanzee spent several years away from his caretaker, and this is the moment of their reunion. The animal is crying with happiness. A woman was away from home for several months, and this is the moment when she and her dog are reunited at the airport. No one knows how they're still alive. Jean Morel, 32 years old, entered a bar during riots and criminals shot at him. Incredibly, he survived 3 gunshots since one hit his wallet, another hit his gun, and another hit his flashlight. He miraculously survived with minor injuries and stopped the criminals. Alejandro Torres, 28 years old, unknowingly inhaled a tiny seed while walking through a forest. Months went by, and little by little he began to feel a very strange pain in his chest. He finally went to the hospital. When they opened his lung, they found something incredible, a 5 centimeter long plant that had started to grow inside him, and they managed to remove it. Robert Jenkins, 58 years old, when he was a child, was shot and a bullet was left lodged in his chest. The doctors couldn't remove it because it was too close to his heart. Robert learned to live with it and had a completely normal life, and when he reached 85 years old, he had a car accident and somehow coughed up the bullet. The strangest things found inside people. A 64-year-old woman in Taiwan started hearing tapping in her ear, as if something was brushing up from the inside. She initially blamed stress, but sleepless nights sent her to the emergency room. When the doctor inserted the camera, he froze. There was a live spider moving around her ear canal. Its shed exoskeleton was also there, as if it had been living there for a long time. In Ukraine, a soldier arrived with a wound near his chest and had a deep pain when breathing. It could have been a fracture, a fragment, something normal in combat. But the X-ray revealed an unexploded grenade silhouette lodged just centimeters from his heart. They worked silently without electric tools and miraculously extracted it. In Australia, a woman began to forget simple things. Doctors suspected anxiety or a tumor. During surgery, they saw something move. An 8 centimeter long live red worm crawling through her brain. The dumbest ways people have lost their lives. Benjamin Turner, 28 years old. During his work break, the man went to the vending machine to buy himself a snack. When he inserted the coins, he saw the snack get stuck halfway. Frustrated, he started shaking the machine forcefully, determined to free his snack. With each movement, the huge machine started to tilt forward until at one point it ended up falling on him and he was fatally crushed. Saul Parker, 32 years old. Saul stood at the altar beside his wife, listening to the reverend. He kept his posture firm, legs pressed together and knees still. But as the minutes passed, his heart began to have trouble pumping blood to his brain due to the tension of the moment. Saul started to feel dizzy. And before anyone could react, he fainted and fell to the floor, hitting his head against the marble of the altar. The impact was so strong that he suffered a brain injury and lost his life. The dumbest ways people have lost their lives. Daniel Novak, 19 years old. At a concert, Daniel tried to get on stage, but singer Randy Blythe immediately pushed him back. Daniel fell backwards, hitting his head on the ground. He was immediately knocked unconscious. He was quickly taken to the hospital. He fell into a coma and died weeks later from the brain injury. 2 years later, when the band returned to the country for a concert, the authorities were waiting for Randy at the airport where he was arrested. Harry Houdini, 52 years old. During one of his performances, the famous illusionist Harry Houdini performed an act in which a volunteer from the audience could punch him in the abdomen. However, a young man stepped in and after several punches, landed a hard one to his stomach. The blow ruptured his appendix, leading to severe peritonitis. Despite prompt treatment, Harry died a few days later. They died in such unusual ways, it's hard to believe. A 60-year-old man wanted to reduce the salt in his diet, so he asked ChatGPT what he could use to replace it. Among the results, he found sodium bromide, chemically similar to salt. Believing it was healthier, he began adding it to all his meals. But he didn't know it was toxic to humans. First, he felt tired, then developed rashes, and eventually his mind began to fail. He grew paranoid, believing his neighbors were poisoning him. When he finally sought hospital treatment, it was too late. Michael Colombini, age 6, was recovering from surgery when he required emergency oxygen during a magnetic resonance imaging scan. A worker, unaware of the danger, entered with a metal tank. The magnet in the machine was active. The tank was launched like a projectile and struck Michael in the head. They fought to save him for 2 days, but he didn't make it. Fails in baby gender reveal parties. I shouldn't be laughing at these things, and neither should you, but I'm going to show you anyway. When they try to pop the balloon, only the outer layer breaks and the real balloon slips away and flies off. So I go into the comments and I find this. Was it a gender reveal or a color reveal? People were saying this was the worst gender reveal they've ever seen in their lives. What do you think? It involved flushing a toilet, and depending on the color of the water, it was one gender or another. In this case, it was a boy. I think it's different, original. This is Oppenheimer's gender reveal. I don't know at what point they thought this was going to be a good idea, but obviously the balloon exploded. Luckily, absolutely no one was hurt and the baby was going to be a boy. I think this is the biggest anger I've seen at a gender reveal. When he finds out their baby is going to be a girl, he starts screaming in a completely uncontrolled way. The most remarkable ways people have died. Edward Wainwright, 34, was declared dead. Yet during the funeral, the supposed corpse staggered out. The villagers were frightened, thinking he was a zombie. Edward, still dazed from the coma, entered the house of an old woman in the small village, and the villagers, armed with pitchforks and stakes, caught him. A priest ran desperately, shouting the man was alive, but it was too late. The villagers attacked and killed him for real this time. Maura Murray, 21 years old, lost control of her car on a rural road and crashed into a tree. A man who witnessed the accident offered help, but Maura said she had already called a tow truck. Minutes later, police arrived at the accident. Maura's car remained, but she had vanished without a trace. Many theories surfaced over the years, but none were confirmed. Years later, she was declared dead, but was never found. They died in such odd ways it's hard to believe. Benson Boone, 41 years old. One night, Sarah and Benson played a game where Benson climbed into a blue suitcase as she filmed. Benson screamed for help, saying he couldn't breathe. Sarah laughed and insulted him instead of helping. The next day, when she opened the suitcase, Benson was obviously lifeless. Basilio I of Byzantium, aged 74, got too close to a deer. Its antlers caught his belt and the frightened animal ran off. The emperor was violently dragged, crashing into branches and rocks on rough terrain. At last, a servant got close enough to cut the belt, but the man soon died from his injuries. James Garfield, the 20th United States President at 49 years old, was shot but survived the initial attack. The doctors, who at that time didn't know much about bacteria, began to probe the wound with their own hands without gloves and infected it. The president endured a terrible infection until it claimed his life. People that survived the impossible. Mateus Renan Calado, 29 years old. The Brazilian pilot faced terror when his plane's engine failed mid-flight, forcing him to glide toward a highway. When he lowered the landing gear, it caught on the trunk of a speeding car. For several seconds, the plane and car moved together until the driver noticed and managed to stop safely without causing an accident. Miraculously, no one was injured. Shocked, the man declared he would never fly again. Michael Andrews was a newborn. Two cleaning workers opened a garbage container and found a baby wrapped in a dirty blanket. He was very cold due to the harsh winter. Obviously, the people quickly saved him, and the woman chose to adopt him. Michael grew up and learned the truth as an adult, that his mother had purposely left him in the dumpster to die. Glitches in reality that prove we live in a simulation. A woman was lying on her bed and noticed something really strange. She still can't explain it. It looks like a small animal was running around under her sheets, but she doesn't have any pets. She even touches it to show there's nothing there. And when she sees it again, she lifts the comforter and sheets and there's nothing. A man found an ant on the living room table, and when he went to crush it, something quite strange happened to him. When he pressed down, thinking he'd crushed the ant, he lifted his finger to find it gone. The ant had teleported elsewhere. He got home late after work and found a deer, so he decided to record it. But when the animal started to move, it simply disappeared. He was walking through the park as usual, but this time something very strange happened. There was a group of people who seemed to have frozen in time, staring at the trees. The parents of these kids don't know whether to laugh or cry. A kid got up to some mischief. He left the faucet running. The kitchen was completely flooded. He knocked over the television and fell completely asleep at the scene of the crime. He was very angry because his favorite WWW wrestler lost. His father started laughing and recording him, and the little boy grabbed a bat and hit the television, breaking it completely. A father dressed up as Michael Myers to scare his little daughter, and instead of getting scared, she started dancing. This little girl isn't afraid of anything in life. This might be one of the most random videos I've ever seen in my life. A boy is running around his house. He falls. When he's on the floor, he discovers a broccoli under the fridge, and without cleaning it or anything, he just eats it. God only knows how long that broccoli had been under the fridge. They died in such bizarre ways, it's hard to believe. Mary Caruti, 61 years old, lived alone in an old house in Houston. One day, she disappeared without a trace. Her family searched for her for 2 years. No one knew if she had left on her own, if she had been kidnapped, nothing. Until some new tenants started renovating the house and found a skeleton inside a wall. It was Mary. The woman ended up there because one day when she went up to the attic, the floor was in bad condition and she fell, getting trapped in the wall, unable to move. No one heard her screams. A soldier, whose name was never revealed, was inspecting a grenade inside a building when it suddenly went off. Everyone panicked except for him. He pressed it to his abdomen, yelled for everyone to leave, and ran to the exit. But some comrades were outside, so throwing it would endanger them. So he made the tough choice to sacrifice himself for his comrades. The world's most dangerous children's toys. A toy released in the 1940s appeared educational but was actually quite crazy. It was called the Gilbert Glass Blowing Set, and it let kids blow glass using real fire at over 1,000 degrees, often resulting in burned hands and faces. Years later came the Aqua Leisure baby floats, which were floaties for babies, but they broke very easily when they were in the water. Many parents watched as their children nearly drowned before their eyes. More than 4 million units were pulled from the market after 31 reported incidents. The Gilbert Castor kit taught you how to melt lead to create figures at home. Several children suffered poisoning and severe burns while playing with metal melted at over 300 degrees, and the toy chemistry set was even worse. There were real explosions and children hospitalized because of experiments with this toy that went wrong. They nearly died for a ridiculous reason. Wang Shangkun, 17 years old, wanted the new iPhone like everyone else but had no money. A stranger offered him a quick solution to sell one of his kidneys. The procedure took place in an illegal clinic without real doctors or hygiene. Nothing. Wang left with his new iPhone, but with his health destroyed. Over time, his other kidneys started to fail, and now he needs a machine to survive. Hetty Green, one of the richest women in the United States, was famous for not spending a single cent. Her son, Ned Green, who was 14 years old, injured his leg while playing. Instead of taking him to a hospital, Hetty dressed him in old clothes and took him to a clinic for the poor so she wouldn't have to pay. But they recognized her and kicked them out. Hetty kept refusing to pay for the treatment. The infection got so bad that later on they had to amputate the boy's leg. You won't be able to imagine the ending of these videos. We see someone recording as the police have stopped another vehicle. There could be thousands of reasons, but you never expected what actually happened. The driver wasn't drunk, he wasn't going too fast, and he wasn't a suspect in a crime. It was simply Batman driving his Batmobile. Not even superheroes are above the law. Don't lie to me, I know you. You all thought something bad, but relax, it's not what it looks like. There's nothing weird about it. It's just a fish in an aquarium. A boy broke his foot and has to rest with his leg elevated. But the funny thing is that his hamster lies down next to him and also lifts its leg, making fun of him. The boy celebrated his birthday by recording his family singing happy birthday to him. But when he pointed the camera back at his grandmother, he found this. She was already eating the cake without waiting for anyone. Animals that did the impossible to save a life. This well-known Italian cyclist lost his leg in an accident, but his best friend does everything to help him. This dog has become the leg he is missing. They were on a boat when his dog suddenly jumped into the water. He didn't know why, but after a few seconds he understood. The animal had seen a little squirrel that was drowning, so he went over, rescued it, and brought it to the boat, saving its life. A small antelope had fallen into the water and couldn't get out, and the other antelopes completely ignored this. But an elephant that was nearby couldn't let the animal lose its life, so he tried to pull it out using his trunk, and after several minutes he managed to do it. A man was completely distracted with his phone and hadn't noticed that a snake was heading straight toward him. But his dog did notice, and he wasn't going to let a snake attack his owner. The dumbest ways people have lost their lives. Randy Lee Tinley, 44 years old. On a dark highway in Montana, Randy had a very dangerous idea: to dress up as Bigfoot to scare drivers. He put on a suit made of leaf camouflage. Shortly after midnight, he stood in the middle of the highway. The first car hit him at full speed. A second vehicle managed to swerve, but the third couldn't stop and ran him over completely. Randy lost his life because of a prank. Daniel Ducks, 27 years old. Daniel worked at SeaWorld in Orlando. One morning, his body was found floating on top of an orca tank. His skin was covered with bites and scratches. At first, his parents believed that the park was responsible and filed a lawsuit. But upon investigation, They discovered that Daniel had hidden in the park after closing and outside of working hours. Then he got into the tank where the huge orca attacked him. Animals that did the impossible to save a life. They were cleaning and one of the shelves they moved was badly placed and was about to fall on the baby, but the family dog had already noticed this and stayed close. When the shelf fell, he managed to cushion the blow. Sometimes we are not aware of how intelligent animals are. A female dog noticed that her puppy's heart had stopped beating. She carefully picked him up with her mouth and took him to the vet herself. Seeing this, the man acted fast and thank God saved him. At a university, the students noticed that the dog wouldn't stop digging in a crack. The animal had been doing this for hours, and the students didn't understand why. The poor thing had its little paws injured from so much digging. So the students decided to give him a hand and discovered that there was a kitten buried in the crack. They managed to get it out and one of the girls adopted it. The dog is a hero. They were seconds away from losing their lives, and in the strangest way. Maria Selenina, 22 years old, worked as a professional mermaid at an aquarium in China. She was doing her show when a giant fish with a huge mouth lunged at her and swallowed her head completely. Screams filled the aquarium. Maria couldn't see anything. She couldn't breathe, but she didn't lose control. After several terrifying seconds, she twisted with all her strength and broke free, surfacing gasping and trembling but alive. In 2008, a Frankfurt to New York flight with 250 passengers nearly ended in disaster when both the pilot and co-pilot fell asleep halfway over the Atlantic. For more than 20 minutes, the controllers tried to make contact with no response, but by pure miracle, the autopilot had kept the course. They woke up just in time. None of the passengers knew how close they had been to disaster. They died in such bizarre ways it seems unbelievable. David Grudman, 27 years old, went with a friend to the Arizona desert to shoot for fun. A giant cactus over 6 meters tall and nearly a ton in weight stood before them. David repeatedly shot at it, laughing as the cactus became riddled with holes. But after several hits, a branch broke off and fell on him, followed by the entire trunk. The cactus instantly crushed him, causing his immediate death. Chrysippus, a 70-year-old Greek philosopher, was one day watching a donkey eating figs. Laughing, he joked, "Give the donkey some wine to go with them." But he laughed so hard at his own joke he couldn't stop. He laughed so hard and for so long that his body couldn't take it anymore. He lost his life with a smile on his face. No one knows how they're still alive. Anke was 8 years old when she was swimming peacefully in the pool at the lodge where she was vacationing with her family in South Africa. Suddenly, a crocodile leapt into the water and bit her leg so hard that it dragged her underwater. Her grandfather didn't hesitate. He jumped in, attacked the reptile, and stuck his fingers in its eyes. The crocodile released her but then bit him. But he kept fighting until he blinded it. Both survived with many wounds. No one knows how they survived. In Thailand, 2 girls went parasailing during their vacation. Everything was fun until the wind shifted and the cable that held them to the boat snapped. Suddenly they were adrift, flying out of control over 30 meters high. The wind slammed them into a building wall, then power lines before they landed on a parked car. Miraculously, both survived with serious injuries, but they were alive. The worst ways people have died. Raghuvir Patel, aged 78. The man had been ill for weeks. His family, believing his illness was incurable, chose to carry out an ancient macabre ritual. They did this to kill the old man and get the inheritance. At dawn, they put him in a bathtub of ice-cold water for several minutes, his body trembling from the cold. Then, following tradition, they forced him to drink excessive amounts of coconut water, causing organ failure and death. Lee Nakamura, 29 years old, was getting ready for a quiet fishing trip when he decided to buy an energy drink from a vending machine. He drank it in one gulp, but minutes later he began to feel seriously ill. He was rushed to the hospital where he lost his life. His case was not the only one. 11 others died the same way and on the same date after drinking from vending machines in different Japanese cities. Investigations revealed that the cans had been poisoned with a powerful herbicide. They had one job and did it poorly. He was at the fair, riding the Ferris wheel, but he was surprised that the ride was lasting so long. But when he looked out, he saw that the operator had completely fallen asleep and no one could stop it. Whoever installed this fan needs to be fired right away. He put the switch in the worst possible spot because sure, you can turn it on easily, but then how do you turn it off when the blades are spinning at full speed? It's this soldier's first day. And after this, I don't know if it'll be his last. His son was in charge of washing dishes and he tried to cheat, but it failed. The punishment will be legendary. From what it looks like, this worker was really distracted because instead of putting the product the customer bought in the bag, she put the card reader in. When she realized, she ran after him. I hope she caught up with him. No one knows how they're still alive. Eliza Harwood, 32 years old, was driving with her husband on a rural road when a strong wind knocked down a huge branch that struck her directly in the neck. Her husband sped down rough roads to a small medical center where a nurse called for emergency air transport and saved Eliza's life. Trenton McAllister, 40 years old, was working alone in a forest cutting trees when a large tree fell on his leg, leaving him completely trapped. With a pocket knife, it took him hours, but he managed to cut off his own leg. He crawled to his tractor and drove to the nearest road where he was finally seen and taken to a hospital. Phineas Cage, 25 years old, was working on railroad construction when a dynamite explosion sent a large iron rod through his face and skull. Incredibly, the man remained conscious while the rod was being removed. He survived the accident. Absurd mistakes that cost lives. Eldar Kudrinsky was 15 years old when he traveled with his father, the captain of an Aeroflot flight bound for Hong Kong. During the flight, the autopilot kept the plane stable and his father allowed him to sit at the controls. Eldar, curious, touched the control, unaware it would shut down the system. The plane started descending slowly and no one noticed. By the time the pilots noticed, it was already too late. The Airbus crashed in the Siberian mountains with 75 on board. A 39-year-old man lost his cell phone inside a huge dinosaur statue. It was an old papier-mâché figure that decorated an abandoned movie theater. He went in through an opening in the dinosaur's leg and got stuck. No one heard him. After several days, a father and his son noticed a strange smell and called the police. Looking inside, they found him trapped upside down, unable to move or breathe. They died in such odd ways it seems unbelievable. Mary Heller, 28 years old. Mary went out into the street one morning and started dancing for no apparent reason. Hours passed, then days, and Mary kept dancing until she lost her life. Then, more than 50 people also started dancing day and night. That was the dancing epidemic, and it disappeared as mysteriously as it had begun. Kim Jong-nam, 45 years old. As Kim walked, two young women quickly approached him from behind. One of them smeared a sticky substance on his face and Kim began to convulse violently and lost his life. The autopsy revealed that he had been poisoned with VX. No one knows who did it or the reason why. Godofredo de Lorena, 35 years old, an assassin hid under the stone toilet of a castle. When Godofredo entered and sat down to relieve himself, the assassin thrust upward and drove a spear through the Duke's body from the rectum to the abdomen. People who survived the impossible. Ronald Popo, 65 years old. Ronald was attacked by Rudy Eugene in downtown Miami. Rudy, under the influence of substances, bit Ronald's face for 20 minutes. Luckily, the police arrived in time and opened fire. Ronald lost 80% of his face. Ozzy Osbourne, 33 years old, was singing at a concert when a fan threw what appeared to be a rubber bat onto the stage. The man picked it up and bit it, thinking it was just a toy, but it was a real bat. Blood filled his mouth and he was rushed to the hospital, where he received rabies shots and other vaccines for serious diseases the animal could carry. Cody Clausen, age 13, got lost while hiking in Yellowstone National Park. After hours alone in the forest, he used his belt buckle to reflect sunlight and signal rescue helicopters. Actor Harrison Ford spotted his signal. They died in such bizarre ways that it's hard to believe. Karen Welser, 35 years old, was simply trying to get her 2-year-old daughter out of the car. Since she was in a hurry, she lifted her through the passenger window, but the little girl accidentally pressed the power window button. In seconds, the glass closed, trapping her mother's neck. Her husband found her unconscious, broke the glass, pulled her out, and rushed to the hospital. But the damage from the pressure was too much. Karen did not survive. In India, a 50-year-old man had a goat that he constantly hit to make it aggressive and use it as a guard. But one day, the animal got tired of it. When the man hit it again, the goat charged at him and struck him several times hard in the abdomen. The man ran to the porch, but she followed him and hit him again, pushing him. He fell head first and died instantly. The goat was rescued by an association as if fate wanted to balance things out. No one knows how they're still alive. Case Dylan Baker, 35 years old. The man collapsed in his apartment because of poor health and weighed 300 kilos. When paramedics arrived, they realized he couldn't be evacuated through the door or stairs. The rescue teams removed a window and reinforced the floor to prevent collapse. They then lowered him with a crane and saved his life in time. Colin Powell, age 31, was in a helicopter with his group when it crashed into a tree during the Vietnam War. Colin broke his ankle but still rescued everyone. He was able to drag them all out one by one before the helicopter exploded. Henry Friston, 20 years old. This soldier found a turtle in the mud and carried it in his backpack. The little creature accompanied him through trenches and crossfire, sharing food and surviving the chaos together. After the conflict, the turtle lived with Henry in his house, and he says she was like his guardian angel during the war. They died in such unusual ways it seems unbelievable. Larry McElroy, 54 years old, decided one night to get rid of an armadillo that kept destroying his garden. He grabbed his gun and shot at it, but the bullet bounced off the animal's tough shell. It hit a fence, changed direction, and went through the back door of his mother-in-law's house. It went through the back of her recliner and hit the 74-year-old woman directly in the back. Brian DePledge, 52 years old, was alone in his house in Bradford, England. No one knows exactly how it happened, but it is believed that he tripped over a stool and his head got stuck between the bars of a clothes rack. His own weight caused the tube to press into his neck, slowly cutting off his breathing. When they found him, he was still trapped there but lifeless. The coroner said, "You're more likely to be struck by lightning than for that to happen."